Hey guys, Cameron, another movie for you guys, and in this movie reviewing, I really was not planning on seeing this movie in theaters. I was definitely interested in this movie to say the least, but it's gonna be Father's Day tomorrow. I figured I'd see a movie with my dad, and this is the movie that he wanted to see, and that movie is Warcraft. Now, I really, like I said, didn't have any expectations with this movie. I really didn't know how this movie was gonna be, just because of the fact that it's a video game movie, and those don't have a good track record at all. I mean, most of them end up sucking really badly and not just like being okay, like sucking really really hard, and I really was wondering if this movie was going to be like that. I really wasn't sure what the turnout was going to be with this movie, and as the trailers came out, like I told you guys, I started to get more and more invested in this story, and I started to be like, okay, maybe this could work really really well. But then I also thought, oh, it's also a video game movie. I don't really know if it's going to work. And in the end, how is Warcraft? I will say Warcraft is much better than other video game movies, but it's still not a great movie. It's a better movie, definitely, and I do think there are some things in here that are really good about Warcraft, and not nearly as bad as the critics are making it out to be. But I don't think that it's nearly as good as I think it could have been, because there are some things here that are really great. Starting with the plot. The plot of this movie is actually really interesting, and something I actually really do like. Basically, the plot of this movie, the basic thing here is that we are humans versus orcs. Orcs are these creatures that obviously, want to take over, and basically we see that there's this portal that separates these two, and there's talks of them possibly, maybe having to ally to defeat this demon, basically, that's in the town, and the orcs are wondering if they want to really retaliate against the humans, and basically that's the plot that's going on. There's other little side plots, but that's basically our main plot, is that it's humans versus orcs, and it sounds really interesting. It definitely does, and there are some things in here that are very interesting, but there are a lot of things here that don't actually work in this movie, and it's something I definitely will say that I don't really think works nearly as well as it should is the cast. Definitely it's something that I don't think works as well as it should have, definitely. Not to say that the cast did a bad job. I definitely won't say that. I don't think the cast was bad here. It's just some of these characters are very cookie cutout. Like, we've seen them in so many medieval movies, and that's the thing. You guys know this is probably my least favorite genre. It is very hard for me to get into these kind of movies unless you have a really great story. That's why I love Game of Thrones so much, because the characters are so compelling, and this movie, that's not the case. Especially Travis Fimmel, our main character, just feels like a standard hero. He's charismatic, he's good at what he does, and he has some dramatic moments. Oh, all the women swoon over him, things like that. He just felt very cookie cutout. I really was not a huge fan of his character. I thought he did a good job. He wasn't bad. He does a good job what he has in the movie, but he just didn't really do much for me, and I really had a hard time remembering who the main character was in this movie, just because that's how much I didn't care about his character. I really did not care what happened to him in this movie. I didn't find him bad necessarily. Like I said, I don't think he did a bad job, and I will definitely say that no one in this movie does a truly awful job. So everyone in this movie, I think, did at least a good job, and everyone did definitely try to give a great performance. It's just his character, I didn't really give a shit about, I have to say. I really did not care about him. There really are only two characters I cared about in this movie, and it's really unfortunate because both Dominic Cooper and Ruth Negga from Preacher are in this movie, and both their characters are really not interesting. This is probably the first time I've seen Dominic Cooper, and he hasn't been a standout. He really didn't do much of anything for me in this movie. He's the king and the ruler of, the Stormwind Kingdom, and he's kind of a beacon of hope, but he doesn't really do much of anything. He kind of just walks around, he talks about the orcs, and he's like, we gotta defeat the orcs and all this stuff, and this accent that he does, which he does a very good job at accent, definitely say that. Dominic Cooper is really good at playing different kinds of characters. It's just here, he doesn't really leave much of an impression on me because I didn't really care about his character. The only two characters I really found myself investing in were first Paula Pat, and I thought she was really interesting in this movie, the character of Garona. I really did like the situation that she's facing, because basically she's kind of at a crossroad in her life. She is a cross between a human and an orc, and she's really trying to figure out what side she's really on and who she really wants to ally with, and that's something I thought was really interesting and really compelling, and something that I can really get behind. But also Toby Kebbell. I mean, once again, Toby Kebbell is an amazing performance as Duraton. I thought the orcs in this movie in general were a lot more interesting, because the orcs really are at this point where they don't really know. I mean, like I said, there are talks of possibly allying with the humans, but there are also parts of revolt. There are also talks of revolting against them. That's something that Toby Kebbell's really confused with. He doesn't really know. Should we possibly ally with the humans? Is that really going to make things better for us, or should we just completely wipe them all out? And think it's a very interesting situation. I really like the situation his character is facing, and he really did a great job in this movie as this character, the Orc. And honestly, I think he should have been the main character, because the way, the development that he has, he seems like the main character to this movie. And honestly, I feel the Orc should have been the main focus. As good as the humans are, I think the Orcs really should have been the main focus, because while the humans are good in this movie, I just didn't really care. I found them very cookie cutter, I found them very standard, and I just didn't really latch onto them in the way the movie wanted me to. And I felt there were way too many wizards in this movie, way too many characters that have these powers, and a lot of them are really over the top, like especially Ben Foster's character, and especially Ben Schnetzer. He was really over the top. He's the guy that's trying to be the funny one, and it never works. It felt very awkward when he tried. It's very much like Matt Smith in Prime Impressions and Zombies. This movie tries to get laughs out of you, and I don't know exactly why they did that. It felt very weird that he tried to be the funny guy. Really didn't work in the end, and really, like I said, this movie is not a great movie for acting. That's definitely not the thing that I will comment this movie for. What this movie did do right for me is actually the directing, because Duncan Jones, the director, very much knows the story he wanted to tell of Warcraft. I think he did a very good job with the tone of this movie. He kept it dark, he kept it serious. I think he definitely did a very good job with that, and he tried to keep the story, you know, grounded. He tried to keep things interesting. I think that was something that was really well done. This is a story that is taking itself seriously, and you do take it seriously. The parts that didn't work for me were the parts where he tried to make things silly, and suddenly he wanted to have fun with this, and I do think the tone is a bit unbalanced. At some points, feels like he wants it to be a serious, war film, and then there were points in a fantasy film, and then there were points where he wants to be like a goofy film, and I really couldn't figure out which one he wanted to do, because they both really didn't work. And there are points in this movie, I will say, where it is as bad as Seventh Son. I definitely will say that. There are points in this movie that are like that. Now, not nearly as bad, but there are points that are Seventh Son, you know, hilarious, and it really does not work for this movie. I just felt the tone was very unbalanced. But probably the worst thing about this movie is the screenplay. The screenplay, some of the dialogue is awful. I'm going to say that right now. Some of the dialogue is absolutely atrocious. Some of the dialogue is really snooze-worthy, and a lot of times when the characters are talking, it's just not interesting. It's really not. It's not boring necessarily, because I didn't find myself bored with this movie. That's not the thing. It's just the characters are talking, and I don't care about these characters, so what's the point in me, you know, really enjoying their scene if I don't care about the characters that are talking? When it was the Orcs, then I was really invested. When we shifted to the humans and we started to focus on some of their things that they were going through, a lot of it just felt like we're just going to add random drama to get you to care about these characters, and that doesn't work. You need to have something interesting about them, and there really wasn't anything interesting about most of the humans, and that's something that really didn't work, is that they focus so much on the humans, and you just don't really care. I don't really care that Ben Foster's a wizard. I don't really care that Sir Anduin, whatever his name is, you know, he's, you know, trying to keep the kingdom safe. I mean, it doesn't really give me much to work with here. You know, they don't really have much drama to deal with, minus human versus orcs, and that's something else that didn't work. In the third act of this movie, they have a completely different plot line going on with these demons, and the magic in this movie really feels out of place. It feels like they really just add the magic here because they want to please fans of the video game, and I will say that actually before walking in this movie, someone told me, you know, this guy that worked at the theater said, you know, if you played the game, you'll like the movie more, and I could definitely see that, because there are a lot of things here that definitely feel like they just did it for fan service, and it really did not work in that respect, definitely. The screenplay really, like I said, did not work. This is a movie that I do think concentrated on story, which is something I definitely really did love. They focused on the story. They didn't just worry about mindless action. That's definitely not the kind of movie you're watching, but I do think that there was a bit too much, you know, there wasn't enough interesting story. The story we're telling, it's good they focused on the story. There just wasn't enough interest to stay invested in said story, and really I think that's kind of what fell apart in the end. But by far the best thing about this movie, no surprise, should be the cinematography here. The cinematography here is absolutely gorgeous, especially compared to other video game films. This is the thing they really took their time with. They really tried to make this look as realistic as possible, and that is when the film is at its best. When you're on that battlefield and you're seeing these two, you know, going at it, I mean, it really is compelling. There's so many out-of-camera shots, just seeing all the chaos that's going on from within. It's so cool to see. I think they did a very good job with that. And when the action is happening, I was invested. I was on the edge of my seat. I thought there was some really good stuff there. Now, when we would cut to like incantations, yeah, then it took me out a bit. I do think there's one too many times where they'll jump cut into something that I don't really care about. And I think they did that a bit too many times. And especially the last fight. The last battle, I definitely think went on way too long. But I do think that the battles here were very well executed. I think they handled them overall really well. And that's something I definitely really did enjoy overall, is that I thought they were pretty well executed. They were pretty well done, to say the least. And the one thing I definitely will comment this movie on, I think probably the best aspect is the orcs. These orcs look amazing. They look really realistic. If there were such thing as orcs in the world, I'm pretty sure this is what they look like. I mean, they look really well done, and they really took their time on making these orcs look as realistic as possible, and they really, I mean, this is up to par with Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. It makes sense why, Toby Kebbell did this movie, because just like Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, like I said, he steals the show here, but also that it looks really real. These orcs look amazing, and they did a really great job making those orcs look as interesting and as realistic as possible, and just the way they look, just the teeth on, like, the back of their throat, I mean, they really do look somewhat menacing, and I think they did a good job with that. The villain here, I think, the villain in this movie, like I said, is completely out of left field. It didn't really exactly work, and he is a bit cartoony, definitely, I think, actually quite cartoony, and kind of ruins the impact of the film, so that really didn't work as well for me. But the way the orcs looked, I thought were fantastic. It's something I really did enjoy, and I thought they handled all that really well. There's something I definitely really did love. So in that respect, things work out really well. The score here, not really much to talk about with the score. The score is good for the most part. I thought the score definitely was something I definitely really did enjoy. The editing, this movie, like I said, I think it jump cuts way too many times, and you definitely do feel the length. This movie is 2 hours long. I definitely did feel the length. It definitely did not fly by for me. I'm not going to lie. The movie did not fly by. There were several times where I was not really into this movie. There were several times I'm like, I'm tuning out. Just when they got to the talking scenes with the humans, it's not nearly as interesting, and that's something that really did kind of ruin this movie for me, and I kind of want to be a little more invested. I will say the way things ended up, they kind of set up this movie for a sequel. I wouldn't mind seeing a sequel. I definitely will say it's not a movie that I'd be like, I don't want to see a sequel ever. I wouldn't mind seeing one. It's just, I really could never see myself watching this movie again. But I will say, because of that, there are a lot of things to love about this movie, between the editing and, Toby Kebbell and characters like that, and some characters are really interesting. They just should have gotten a bit more focus and should have been the main focus of the movie, and not have these humans take up so much in the movie, because they're just not that interesting. But because of the positive stuff, I am going to end up giving Warcraft a 3 out of 5 or a C+. Not at all a bad movie. Really not a bad movie, especially compared to other video game adaptations. This is a lot better. There's a lot more to love about this movie. There was a lot more to latch onto here, and that's something I really did love. I thought they handled that really well, and that's something I definitely really appreciated about this movie. For sure, definitely. I think that was something that they got done really well, and definitely something I will definitely applaud them on, is that I think they tried to make a compelling story. It didn't exactly work, but for the most part, it was a lot better than most video games are. So overall, guys, let me know what you guys thought of this movie. You have seen it. Are you a fan of World of Warcraft? If you were a fan, were you happy with the way this movie turned out? Because I'm pretty sure the story was an original story, which I definitely give it to them, because it's not easy to come up with a story for a video game that doesn't have much of one. With something like The Last of Us, that's easy to do, but for something like this, I heard World of Warcraft doesn't have much of a story, so I think it's cool that they made this into a story. I think it's really cool the way they did that. What do you think of the characters? What do you think of the movie overall? Let me know what you guys thought of this movie. Love to hear your thoughts on it. We'll see you guys in my next, which will be for the season of School of Rock. Yes, School of Rock does end tonight. Oh boy, do I have a lot of things to say about that, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.